I arrived at Station K7 on the 14th of February, though the season meant nothing this far north. The helicopter banked over white nothing, then set down on a pad scraped clean by a plow blade welded to an ATV. The pilot handed me 2 duffel bags and a plastic crate before lifting off without a word. The rotor wash sent ice crystals into my face. I counted 93 steps to the entrance. The station was a low cement structure half buried in permafrost, painted industrial orange that had faded to rust. A dish array rose from the roof, locked in a south-facing position. I found the key under the 3rd propane tank as instructed, worked the lock with numb fingers, and pulled the outer door inward against a rubber seal. The inner door opened to a warmth that smelled of diesel and old coffee. Morris had left 3 days prior. His note sat on the monitoring desk, written in block letters on the back of a supply manifest. Contract paid in full. Equipment logs in drawer 2. You'll do fine if you follow procedure. Radio silence except for required checks. Someone will be here March 9th with your rotation. Beneath that, taped to the metal desktop, was a laminated card titled Operating Guidelines. I read it twice before unpacking. 1 broadcast verification must occur at 2:14 a.m., 4:41 a.m., and 6:17 a.m. Log signal strength and carrier wave only. Do not acknowledge voice content. 2. The eastern corridor is locked. It will remain locked. If you hear knocking from that direction, verify all exterior doors are sealed and continue your task. 3. During monitoring windows, keep the workstation lamp at its lowest setting. The overhead fluorescence must remain off between 2 a.m. and 7 a.m. 4. If the telephone rings, let it complete 5 full rings before answering. If it rings fewer than 5 times, do not pick up the receiver. 5. The storage room requires inventory every 3rd day at 11 a.m. Count all items. If the count differs from the prior log by more than 3 units, radio station K4 on channel 9. 6. You may see movement through the north window. This is reflection from the dish array during certain atmospheric conditions. Do not open the blinds to verify. 7. Emergency beacon is for equipment failure or medical crisis only. False activation voids your contract and incurs a $15,000 penalty. 8. If you observe a figure near the fuel tanks, confirm via the south window whether the ATV is parked in its designated spot. If the ATV is present, the figure is authorized. If the ATV is absent, remain inside and log the time. 9. The generator runs on a 60-hour cycle. Refuel only during daylight hours. Fuel cans are stored in the external shed. Carry no more than 2 cans per trip. 10. Personal calls are prohibited. The satellite phone is for supply requests and required check-ins only. Check-ins occur every Monday at 10 a.m. Use your assigned call sign, Echo 7. 11. Do not write anything on the walls, floor, or ceiling. Do not remove any writing already present. 12. If the broadcast signal ceases entirely during a monitoring window, follow the emergency restoration procedure posted inside the equipment cabinet. Do not improvise. I set my watch to match the digital clock above the desk. It read 8:46 p.m. I had 5 hours before the first monitoring window. The interior was a cross-shaped layout. The main room held the monitoring desk, a kitchenette with a 2-burner stove, a table, and a shelf stocked with canned goods. The west arm contained a bunk bed and a closet. The south arm ended at a bathroom with a propane water heater. The north arm held the storage room, its door propped open with a wooden wedge. The eastern corridor door was steel, windowless, and secured with a deadbolt and padlock. A strip of duct tape sealed the gap at the bottom. I checked the exterior doors. Both locked. I wedged the inner door's rubber stop into place and tested the seal with my palm. Cold air hissed through a gap near the hinge. I found a roll of weather stripping in the storage room and applied 2 layers. Morris had left the place cleaner than I expected. The monitoring desk held a broadcast receiver, a spectrum analyzer, a logging computer with a cracked screen, and a VHF radio set to channel 9. A metal clipboard hung from a hook, its chain long enough to reach the keyboard. The current log showed 3 weeks of entries in Morris's tight handwriting. Signal strength measurements, timestamps, outside temperature, wind speed, nothing else. I opened drawer 2. Inside were 4 identical logs, each covering a prior contract period. Different handwriting, same data columns, no notes or observations. The north window was covered by vinyl blinds, closed. I touched them once and let them settle. Through the south window I saw the ATV parked beside the fuel shed, half buried in a drift. The fuel tank stood in a line 10 yards beyond. 50-gallon drums painted yellow. I counted 6. At 10 p.m., I made coffee and ate a freeze-dried meal rehydrated with water from a 5-gallon jug. I had 17 jugs in the storage room plus 63 cans of food, 12 batteries for the handheld radio, 8 rolls of toilet paper, and a plastic tub of salt. I wrote the counts in the inventory log. The previous entry, dated 3 days prior, matched exactly. I lay on the bunk at 11 and set an alarm for 1:50 a.m. The building groaned once, a metallic contraction I assumed was roofing. I closed my eyes and thought about the debt I was clearing. 63 days of this would zero the balance and leave me with $1,600. The alarm woke me from a dream I didn't recall. I dressed in the same thermals and wool shirt, pulled on my boots, and went to the monitoring desk. The digital clock read 1:53 a.m. I switched on the desk lamp at its lowest setting and confirmed the overhead lights were off. The receiver's backlight cast green shadows across the logs. At 2:14 a.m., I tuned to frequency 84.3 megahertz and listened. Static, then a carrier wave, then a voice reading numbers in groups of 5. A woman's voice, calm and unhurried. I noted the signal strength at -42 decibels. The carrier wave held steady. I logged both values and the timestamp. The voice continued for 3 minutes, then stopped. The carrier wave persisted for another 20 seconds before cutting to static. I returned the receiver to standby mode and adjusted the desk lamp to confirm it was still at minimum brightness. At 2:19 a.m., I heard knocking. It came from the eastern corridor. 3 sharp impacts, evenly spaced, followed by silence. I looked at the door. The deadbolt was engaged. The padlock was closed. The duct tape along the bottom edge was smooth and unbroken. I verified the exterior doors, both locked. I returned to the desk and entered a note in the log, knocking from east corridor. Verified seals intact. The knocking did not repeat. At 4:41 a.m., I performed the second broadcast verification. Signal strength -41 decibels. Carrier wave stable. The voice read different number groups, same cadence. I logged the data and waited. No knocking. I made coffee and watched the south window until the sky began its slow shift from black to gray. At 6:17 a.m., I completed the third verification. Signal strength -43 decibels. By 7 a.m., I switched on the overhead lights and heated water for oatmeal. Daylight in the tundra was a relative term. The sun traced a low arc that never cleared the horizon, casting everything in shades of blue and violet. I waited until 9 a.m., then dressed in my parka and gloves. I unlocked the outer door and stepped into wind that felt like broken glass. The ATV started on the third pull. I drove it 20 yards to the fuel shed and unlocked the hasp. Inside were 12 red fuel cans, a funnel, a coil of rope, and a spare spark plug. I carried 2 cans back to the generator housing, a metal box bolted to the south wall. The generator rumbled steadily. I checked the gauge, 60%. I would need to refuel in 2 days. I returned the cans and locked the shed. The wind had erased my boot prints. I scanned the area around the fuel tanks and saw nothing but smooth snow and the gray shape of the dish array rising from the roof. Inside, I stripped off the parka and recorded the generator status in the maintenance log. I spent the rest of the morning reviewing the emergency restoration procedure, which was taped inside the equipment cabinet beside a red binder labeled Technical Specifications. The procedure was 11 steps, each requiring a specific tool in a timed sequence. I located the tools in a canvas roll beneath the desk. At 11 a.m., I performed the inventory. I counted every item in the storage room and matched the totals against the previous log. 17 water jugs, 63 cans, 12 batteries, 8 toilet paper rolls, 1 tub of salt, all counts matched. I ate lunch at noon, canned soup heated on the stove. The telephone on the wall had not rung. At 2 p.m. I lay on the bunk and slept until 6. I woke to darkness and the steady hum of the generator. I heated a meal, logged the outside temperature at -23 degrees and read a paperback novel I'd brought in my duffel. The sentences blurred. I read the same page 3 times. At 1:50 a.m. I returned to the monitoring desk. The pattern held. Broadcast verification at 2:14, 4:41, and 6:17. Signal strength varied by a single decibel. The voice read numbers. I logged the data. At 2:22 a.m., knocking came from the eastern corridor. 3 impacts, evenly spaced. I verified the seals and wrote a second entry in the log. On the third night, the knocking came at 2:22 a.m. and again at 3:06 a.m. I did not respond. I kept the desk lamp at minimum brightness and waited for the next monitoring window. On the morning of the 4th day, I performed inventory as required. All counts matched. I refueled the generator, carrying 2 cans per trip, locking the shed between trips. The wind had died. The silence was worse than the wind. At 10 a.m. on the 8th day, the satellite phone beeped. I answered using my call sign. Echo 7, station check. Echo 7 operational, supply status green. Copy. Next check Monday 1000. The line went dead. On the 11th day, the knocking came at 2:22 a.m., 3:06 a.m., and 4:38 a.m. Each sequence was 3 impacts, evenly spaced. I verified the seals after each occurrence and continued my tasks. On the 13th day, I counted the storage room inventory: 17 water jugs, 60 cans of food, 12 batteries, 8 toilet paper rolls, 1 tub of salt. I recounted twice. 60 cans. The previous log listed 63. I checked the kitchen. 2 empty cans in the trash, rinsed and stacked. I had eaten twice since the last inventory. The count should be 61. I recounted a 4th time. 60 cans. I went to the VHF radio and tuned to channel 9. Station K4, this is Echo 7, inventory discrepancy, requesting confirmation. Silence for 30 seconds, then, Echo 7, state the variance. 3 units below expected count, food stores. Copy, log the time and continue standard procedure. Do not adjust physical inventory. Understood. I logged the time, 11:14 a.m. I did not move the cans. That night at 2:14 a.m., I performed the broadcast verification. Signal strength -42 decibels, carrier wave stable. The woman's voice read numbers. At 2:22 a.m., the knocking came. 3 impacts. I verified the seals. At 2:26 a.m., I heard a voice. It came from the eastern corridor, a man's voice muffled by the steel door. Morris? I did not respond. I kept my eyes on the monitoring logs. Morris, the lock's stuck. Can you help me with this? I checked the clock. 2:27 a.m. I verified the exterior doors. Both locked. The ATV was visible through the south window, parked in its spot. Morris, come on, it's cold out here. I logged the event. Voice from East Corridor. Verified exterior doors secure, continued monitoring tasks. The voice stopped at 2:31 a.m. At 4:41 a.m., I performed the second verification. The voice on the broadcast sounded different, deeper. Still reading numbers in groups of 5. I noted signal strength and carrier wave. I did not acknowledge the content. At 6:17 a.m., the third verification proceeded without deviation. At 7 a.m., I switched on the overhead lights. I inspected the eastern corridor door. The deadbolt was engaged. The padlock was closed. The duct tape along the bottom was smooth. I placed my palm against the steel. It was cold. On the 16th day, the inventory matched. 60 cans, I did not question it. On the 19th day, the telephone rang at 3:42 p.m. I counted the rings. 1, 2, 3, 4. It stopped. I did not pick up the receiver. It rang again at 8:13 p.m. I counted 5 full rings and answered. Station K7. Static, then a click. The line went dead. On the 21st day at 2:14 a.m., the broadcast signal did not appear. I tuned the receiver across the expected frequency range, static on all bands. I checked the spectrum analyzer. No carrier wave. I consulted the emergency restoration procedure. Step 1. Verify antenna connections at the rooftop junction box. Required tools: Phillips screwdriver, electrical tape, headlamp. I dressed in my parka, grabbed the tool roll, and unlocked the outer door. The wind had returned. I climbed the external ladder welded to the south wall, each rung coated in ice. The junction box was mounted below the dish array, secured with 4 screws. I opened it and inspected the connections. All cables were seated. No corrosion. I closed the box and descended. Inside, I checked the receiver, still static. Step 2. Verify generator output voltage. Required tools, multimeter. I went to the generator housing. The multimeter read 117 volts. Within tolerance. Step 3. Bypass the surge suppressor and connect the receiver directly to the backup power circuit. I followed the diagram taped inside the equipment cabinet. I disconnected 3 cables, rerouted 2, and powered the receiver through the red outlet marked AUX. I tuned to 84.3 MHz. The carrier wave appeared. Signal strength -39 decibels. The woman's voice resumed reading numbers. I logged the restoration time, 2:31 a.m. I completed the monitoring window and returned the system to standard configuration at 4:38 a.m. At 4:41 a.m., the second verification proceeded normally. The voice was the woman's again. On the morning of the 23rd day, I saw movement near the fuel tanks. It was 9:46 a.m. I was at the south window drinking coffee. A figure stood between the second and third tanks wearing a dark parka. I set down the coffee and checked the ATV. It was parked in its designated spot. I did not go outside. I logged the time, 9:46 a.m. I watched the figure for 11 minutes. It did not move. At 9:57 a.m., it was no longer there. On the 26th day, I performed inventory. 17 water jugs, 60 cans, 12 batteries, 7 toilet paper rolls, 1 tub of salt. I recounted the toilet paper. 7 rolls. The previous log listed 8. I checked the bathroom. 1 partial roll on the holder. I had replaced it 2 days prior. The variance was 2 units. I did not radio station K4. On the 28th day, a storm moved in. The wind reached speeds I could not estimate. Snow erased the south window. I lit the desk lamp at 1:50 a.m. and waited. At 2:14 a.m., the broadcast verification proceeded. Signal strength -48 decibels, carrier wave intermittent. The woman's voice was broken by static. I logged the degraded signal and continued. At 2:22 a.m., the knocking came, louder than before. 6 impacts instead of 3. I verified the exterior doors, both locked. The seals were intact. At 2:26 a.m., the voice returned. Echo 7, this is station K4, do you copy? I looked at the VHF radio, it was off. The voice was coming from the eastern corridor. Echo 7, we have updated procedures, please acknowledge. I did not respond. I logged the event and continued monitoring. At 2:31 a.m., the desk lamp flickered. I checked the generator housing through the south window. The exhaust plume was visible. The lamp steadied. At 4:41 a.m., the second verification showed signal strength at minus 51 decibels. The carrier wave dropped twice during the window. The voice reading numbers was now a man's voice, faster cadence, groups of 7 instead of 5. I logged the deviations. At 6:17 a.m., the third verification failed. No signal. I initiated the emergency restoration procedure. I climbed to the roof in near zero visibility, verified the antenna connections, and returned. The receiver showed static. I bypassed the surge suppressor. The signal returned at 6:23 a.m. Signal strength minus 43 decibels. The woman's voice had returned. At 7 a.m., I switched on the overhead lights and made coffee. My hands were shaking. I ate a can of peaches and slept until noon. The storm continued for 3 days. I did not go outside. I ate canned food, cold, and rationed water. The generator ran without interruption. On the third night at 2:14 a.m., the broadcast included a new element. After the number groups, the woman's voice said a single word: compliance. I logged it as content, not acknowledgement. On the 32nd day, the storm cleared. I performed inventory at 11 a.m. 16 water jugs, 59 cans, 12 batteries, 7 toilet paper rolls, 1 tub of salt. The variance in water was 1 unit. The variance in food was 1 unit. Total variance, 2 units. I did not radio station K4. I refueled the generator, carrying 2 cans per trip. The snow had drifted to 5 feet in places. The ATV would not start. I carried the cans on foot, 63 steps each direction. On the return from the second trip, I saw boot prints near the fuel tanks. Not mine. The tread pattern was different. I followed them for 20 yards. They stopped at a smooth patch of snow with no continuation. I went inside and locked both doors. At 10 a.m. on the 35th day, the satellite phone beeped. Echo 7 station check. Echo 7 operational, supply status green, weather event resolved. Copy rotation on schedule March 9. Maintain standard procedure. Understood. On the 39th day at 3:18 a.m., the telephone rang. I counted 5 full rings and answered. Station K7, a woman's voice. Signal integrity is degrading. Check the dish alignment. Who is this? The line went dead. I checked the receiver. The broadcast was active. Signal strength minus 42 decibels. I did not climb to the roof. On the 41st day, I saw the figure again. It stood near the third fuel tank at 4:12 p.m. I confirmed the ATV was parked in its spot. I watched through the south window. The figure remained motionless for 18 minutes. At 4:30 p.m., I looked away to refill my coffee. When I looked back, it was gone. On the 42nd day, I found something I had not noticed before. I was checking the generator housing at 9:37 a.m. when I saw a marking on the exterior wall. A single word carved into the cement, shallow and weathered. Morris. Below it, scratched in smaller letters, March 8th. I did not touch it. I measured the distance from the generator housing to the eastern corridor door. 42 feet, exterior wall. The marking was directly opposite the corridor. Inside, I examined the eastern corridor door again. The duct tape seal was intact. I pressed my ear to the steel and listened. Silence. I logged the observation. External wall marking noted. No action taken. On the 43rd day, the telephone rang at 7:09 p.m. I counted the rings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I answered. Station K7, a man's voice. This is Echo 6. Did Morris leave my toolkit? I paused. Echo 6? Yeah. I left a red metal toolkit in the storage room. Morris was supposed to hold it for me. I went to the storage room. I had inventoried it 7 times. There was no red toolkit. It's not here. Check under the bunk. I went to the bunk and lifted the mattress. Nothing. I checked beneath the frame. A red metal toolkit, dented and scratched, sat against the wall. I found it. Good, I'll pick it up when I'm back. Through. Don't open it. Understood. The line went dead. I carried the toolkit to the storage room and placed it on the top shelf. I did not open it. I added it to the inventory log. 1 red metal toolkit, Origin Echo 6. On the 44th day, I performed inventory. 16 water jugs, 58 cans, 11 batteries, 7 toilet paper rolls, 1 tub of salt, 1 red metal toolkit. The variance in food was 1 unit. The variance in batteries was 1 unit. I wrote the counts in the log and noted the time. 11:07 a.m. At 2:14 a.m. on the 46th day, the broadcast signal included a new voice. A child's voice reading numbers in groups of 3. Signal strength -41 decibels. Carrier wave stable. I logged the data. At 2:22 a.m. the knocking came. 9 impacts, rapid and uneven. At 2:26 a.m. the voice from the eastern corridor said, "You're doing well. 7 more days." I did not respond. At 2:38 a.m. I heard footsteps. They came from above, crossing the roof from west to east. Slow, deliberate steps. I counted 12 before they stopped directly above the monitoring desk. I checked the south window. The ATV was parked in its spot. The fuel shed was locked. The footsteps resumed at 2:41 a.m., moving east to north. They stopped above the storage room. At 4:41 a.m., I performed the second verification. The child's voice had returned, reading numbers in groups of 3. Signal strength -40 decibels. At 6:17 a.m., the third verification showed the woman's voice. Signal strength -42 decibels. She read numbers in groups of 5, then said, "Compliance achieved." I logged it and waited for 7 a.m. On the 50th day, I woke at 6:23 a.m. from a dream where I was counting. In the dream, the numbers never reached the total I needed. I made coffee and watched the sky lighten to gray. At 11 a.m., I performed inventory. 15 water jugs, 58 cans, 11 batteries, 6 toilet paper rolls, 1 tub of salt, 1 red metal toolkit. The variance in water was 1 unit. The variance in toilet paper was 1 unit. I logged the counts. I spent the afternoon reading the prior logs in drawer 2, 4 contracts before mine. The first was dated 18 months prior, signed by someone named Chen. The entries were identical to Morris's. Signal strength, timestamps, temperatures, no observations. The second log was signed by Valdez, same data. The third by someone with illegible handwriting. The fourth by Morris. I opened the red binder labeled Technical Specifications. Most pages detailed the broadcast equipment, antenna configurations, and frequency allocations. The final page was different. It was a photocopy of a memo dated 6 years prior. Station K7 Structural Assessment. Following the incident on February 3rd, the Eastern Corridor has been sealed per safety protocols. Access is restricted to authorized personnel with Level 4 clearance. Operators are advised that atmospheric conditions may produce auditory anomalies. These do not constitute equipment failure or safety risk. Standard operating procedures remain in effect. The memo was unsigned. I closed the binder and returned it to the cabinet. At 2:14 a.m. on the 54th day, the broadcast signal was the woman's voice again, reading numbers in groups of 5. Signal strength -42 decibels. At 2:22 a.m., there was no knocking. At 4:41 a.m. and 6:17 a.m., the verifications proceeded without deviation. On the morning of the 57th day, I saw headlights. It was 8:31 a.m. A snowcat approached from the south, moving slowly through the drifts. It stopped 30 yards from the station. A figure climbed out wearing an orange parka. I unlocked the outer door and waited. The figure was a woman, mid-40s, carrying a clipboard. Echo 7? Yes. I'm Dawes, rotation supervisor. Your relief arrives in 2 days. I'm here for the equipment audit. She came inside and removed her gloves. She inspected the monitoring desk, the logs, the equipment cabinet. She checked the inventory totals and nodded. Variances are within tolerance. Generator status? Operational, refueled every 60 hours. Good. Any equipment failures? One surge suppressor bypass during storm conditions, restored per procedure. She made notes on her clipboard. You followed protocol. Contract fulfilled. Your payment clears on March 10th. She handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Addendum to operating guidelines. Effective immediately 13. If you observe writing on the walls that was not present during your previous inspection, do not read it. Cover it with duct tape and log the location. 14. The north window blinds must remain closed at all times. If you find them open, close them immediately and verify all entry points. 15. During the final 48 hours of your rotation, monitor broadcasts at 2:14 a.m. only. Do not perform the 4:41 a.m. or 6:17 a.m. verifications. 16. If your relief does not arrive by 10 a.m. on March 9th, radio station K4 on Channel 9. Do not leave the facility. 17. Personal items must be removed prior to departure. Do not leave clothing, food, or written materials. 18. Before departing, reset all equipment to standby mode and lock the eastern corridor door with both the deadbolt and padlock. Confirm the duct tape seal is intact. I read the addendum twice. Why the changes? Dawes zipped her parka. Standard updates. You'll brief your relief on the core guidelines only. The addendum stays with you. What happened on February 3rd? She looked at me for 3 seconds. That's above your clearance level. The procedures work if you follow them. That's all you need to know. And the toolkit under the bunk? Echo 6 will retrieve it. Don't concern yourself. She left without further explanation. The snowcat disappeared into the gray. On the 58th day, I inspected the station. No writing on the walls. The north window blinds were closed. I performed inventory at 11 a.m. 15 water jugs, 57 cans, 11 batteries, 6 toilet paper rolls, 1 tub of salt, 1 red metal toolkit. I logged the counts. At 2:14 a.m. on the 59th day, I performed the broadcast verification. Signal strength minus 42 decibels. The woman's voice read numbers in groups of 5. I did not monitor at 4:41 a.m. or 6:17 a.m. The silence felt wrong. I sat at the desk in the dark, the lamp at minimum brightness. At 4:38 a.m., I heard the knocking. 3 impacts from the eastern corridor. I did not verify the seals. I did not log it. At 6:12 a.m., the telephone rang. I counted the rings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I answered. Station K7. Static for 5 seconds, then a sound like breathing. Hello? More static. I heard something behind it. A voice, distant and layered with interference. It might have been saying numbers. It might have been saying my name. The line went dead. I logged the call. 6:12 a.m. Telephone. Static and interference. No intelligible communication. At 7 a.m., I switched on the overhead lights. I made coffee and ate a can of beans. I had 4 cans remaining. The rotation would end before I needed to open the 5th. At 9:18 a.m., I checked the fuel tanks through the south window. The ATV was parked in its spot. No figure stood between the tanks. I watched for 12 minutes to be certain. At 11 a.m., I performed the final standard inventory. 15 water jugs, 57 cans, 11 batteries, 6 toilet paper rolls, 1 tub of salt, 1 red metal toolkit. I wrote the counts in precise block letters matching the style of the prior operators. At 2:37 p.m., I checked the north window blinds. They were closed. I verified they were latched and had not shifted since my last inspection. At 6:04 p.m., I began packing my personal items. 2 changes of clothes, the paperback novel I had never finished, a toothbrush, a razor. I placed everything in my duffel and set it by the outer door. At 8:41 p.m., I made my final meal. Canned stew heated on the stove. I ate standing at the counter watching the south window. The sky was black. The generator hummed. At 1:50 a.m. on the 60th day, I returned to the monitoring desk for the last time. I sat in the chair Morris had sat in, that Chen had sat in, that Valdez had sat in, that the operator with illegible handwriting had sat in. I switched on the desk lamp at its lowest setting. The overhead lights remained off. At 2:14 a.m., I performed the broadcast verification. Signal strength minus 42 decibels. Carrier wave stable. The woman's voice read numbers in groups of 5. I logged the data with the same precision I had maintained for 59 nights. When the voice stopped, I did not move. I waited for the carrier wave to cut to static. It took 19 seconds. At 2:22 a.m., the knocking came. 3 impacts from the eastern corridor, evenly spaced. I verified the exterior doors by sight alone. Both locked. I did not log the knocking. The addendum had instructed me to monitor only at 2:14 a.m. during the final 48 hours. Logging anomalies outside that window was not required. At 2:26 a.m., I heard the voice. Echo 7. It came from the eastern corridor. Not muffled this time. Clear. Echo 7, your rotation is complete. I did not respond. I kept my hands on the desk, my eyes on the log. You did well. Better than most. The voice was familiar. I had heard it before, but not from the corridor. I had heard it on the broadcast. It was the woman's voice, the one that read numbers, the one that said, compliance. We appreciate your service. I looked at the receiver. It was in standby mode. The voice was not coming from the equipment. The next operator will arrive in 7 hours and 31 minutes. You should rest. I remained silent. I counted my breaths. 37 before the voice spoke again. There are 3 cans remaining in the storage room that are past their expiration date. You should not include them in the transfer inventory. Place them in the waste container outside. I had not checked the expiration dates. I went to the storage room. I examined each can under the overhead light. 3 cans of chili, bottom shelf, far left corner. Expiration date stamped on the lids. October of the previous year. I had not noticed them during any of my counts. I carried the 3 cans to the kitchenette and set them on the counter. The voice came again, no longer from the corridor. It came from everywhere. Discard them now. It's 9 degrees outside, 31 seconds of exposure. You have your parka. I looked at the parka hanging by the door. I looked at the 3 cans. I looked at the eastern corridor door. The deadbolt was engaged. The padlock was closed. I put on the parka. I unlocked the outer door and stepped into the cold. The waste container was mounted to the exterior wall 12 feet from the entrance. I walked to it, lifted the lid and placed the 3 cans inside. The metal clanged. I closed the lid and returned to the station. 27 seconds total. Inside, I locked the outer door and removed the parka. The voice did not return. At 4:38 a.m., I heard the knocking again. 3 impacts. I did not verify the seals. At 6:12 a.m., the telephone rang. I counted the rings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I answered. Station K7, Morris's voice. Did you follow the rules? Yes. All of them? Yes. Good. Don't open the eastern corridor, not even after you leave. The line went dead. On the morning of March 9th at 9:53 a.m., I heard the helicopter. It landed on the pad. A man climbed out carrying 2 duffel bags. I met him at the outer door. "You're Echo 7? "Yes. You're the relief?" "Echo 8. Dawes said you'd brief me." I handed him the laminated card with the core guidelines. He read it while I packed my belongings. I stripped the bunk, bagged the trash, and reset the monitoring equipment to standby mode. I checked the eastern corridor door. Deadbolt engaged. Padlock closed. Duct tape seal intact. Echo 8 looked up from the card. "Anything else I should know?" I thought about the knocking, the voice, the figure near the fuel tanks, the inventory variances, the footsteps on the roof, the memo about February 3rd, the addendum folded in my pocket. "Follow the procedures exactly. Don't improvise. Don't open the eastern corridor." "What's in there?" "I don't know. And you won't either if you're smart." He nodded slowly. I walked to the helicopter, the rotor already spinning. The pilot took my duffel bags and gestured for me to climb in. I looked back at the station, once. Echo 8 stood in the doorway, holding the laminated card. Behind him, through the window, I saw the desk lamp still glowing at minimum brightness. The helicopter lifted. The station shrank to an orange dot, then vanished into white. I never asked what was in the eastern corridor. I never wanted to know.